The Way We Weren't is the 8th episode of Kirstie Alley's Big Life, and I rather enjoyed this one, which is usually the case. We do have a little bit more of a focus on the weight loss journey here. The past couple of episodes, although they've been brilliant, haven't really focused on the weight loss side, so it was nice to have a bit of that here. We also have part of it focusing on True and a challenge that Kirstie sets. We get to see a bit of Hollywood, which is always really nice. So there will be spoilers as I talk briefly about what happens in this and share some thoughts. Actually, my thoughts aren't that extensive beyond I liked it, but there are a couple of things that stood out to me as being rather entertaining. So the story with True. This comes about because he has a fiancée. We meet his fiancée very briefly, and Kirstie realises that he is still quite young. So she gives him a challenge. And this challenge is to book a gig for his band by Friday. The challenge is set on Monday. And we get to see the band going to these different locations around Hollywood trying to get this gig. They present themselves really well, really professionally, but that doesn't matter. It's very short notice, apparently, in the world of booking gigs. I know nothing about music and gigs, and some of the people they meet are not very nice. It seems like a very brutal, blunt industry, which doesn't surprise me. And it wasn't very clear what direction this was going to take. Were we going to be celebrating by the end of the episode because they booked a gig, or are we going to have the lesson that actually it's not possible to do this? And I feel like we get a little bit of both, because what does happen is they do get to book a gig and we get to see them perform. It's really great. And obviously I was overjoyed that this happened. But at the same time, it was very clear that this was last minute. This is not typical. And I don't think anybody in that band would want to be doing that week after week. But I'd like to think that hopefully now they realise that they have to book weeks in advance, and this is an experience where they've learned quite a lot in a short space of time, they might then go and try and book gigs in advance. And I don't know if that happens, but certainly there are some lessons here and some really good takeaways. And what I think is also really great is that we find out how much they earned for the gig. And it was $40-something. I can't remember the exact amount. But divided among the band as well. That's not a lot of money. That's basically nothing. I'm not saying it should have been higher, because they are a new band. They haven't got a big following. Obviously, they're not going to get paid hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a set. But I think that provides some really interesting and important information for anybody who is in a similar situation, that you can't just, and I'm not saying they thought they could do this, I absolutely don't think they thought this, but it definitely helps to show that you can't just go from practicing in your home one day to booking loads of gigs the next day and earning hundreds and hundreds of dollars. It is a process, and that's obviously the way it should be, I guess, because you have to start somewhere and then climb from there. And they seem ambitious. As I said, they presented themselves well, very professionally, and it was really insightful for somebody like me who has no idea how the industry works. I don't know anything about music at all, so I found that to be really fascinating, and I was really happy for True and his band to actually get the gig, and it was nice to see bits of Hollywood. We then have the part of the episode focusing on the weight loss, or at least focusing on the workout. I don't think we've had a weigh-in in a good few episodes. Jim is sick. He is blowing his nose a lot. I think they definitely milked it for the purpose of the episode, and Kirstie has given him 48 hours to rest in her bed, and she's basically agreed to care for him for 48 hours so that he can get over this as quickly as possible. And Jim starts to demand things. And again, I absolutely think this was done for the episode. I don't think Jim would be demanding these things in real life. I'm laughing because there was something that in my notes that made me laugh a lot. He's calling her to ask for these things, and he asks for orange juice. Pretty reasonable request when you're sick. And there's a brief pause, and then he adds, with no pulp. That's definitely him taking the pee with that one, and I rather enjoyed it quite a lot. Kirstie is clearly getting very, very frustrated at these constant demands, and as I said, I'm pretty sure that he was milking it for the episode. I'm 100% certain he was milking it for the episode. It wouldn't surprise me if either one of the camera people or a producer or somebody was giving him these things to say to her to get the best reactions. And it's very, very entertaining. We then have quite an interesting moment where Kirstie is checking on Jim, if you like, and she actually brings up very briefly her religion. And I don't think she's mentioned her religion in the show before. She was a member of the Church of Scientology. I feel like this is something that a lot of people are not happy with her for, but I don't think it's anybody else's business. I never see her ramming it down other people's throats, unlike a lot of people who are a member of Scientology, which definitely does happen. As a teenager, I would frequently walk past a Scientology building and people would be standing outside throwing leaflets in my face. It's a slight exaggeration, but not really. But I've never seen that with Kirstie Alley, and I don't see her bringing it up herself that frequently. And I was, because of that, kind of surprised by the mention of it. But she didn't actually mention, she just said, in my religion. She didn't mention the specific religion. So if you don't know that she was a member of Scientology, then you wouldn't know what she's talking about. And she actually said in her religion, they believe that when somebody becomes sick, it's because of something that has happened in their life beforehand. And she asks Jim if anything has happened, and Jim reveals that it could be because they're both chubby, but they're not buddies. At the beginning of this series, Kirstie asked Jim to be her chubby bunny and embark on this weight loss journey for the show, for the series. And as Jim points out here, they're doing the chubby part, not really doing the buddy part. They're not really doing a lot of activities together. They're kind of almost like they're competing rather than working together. And Kirstie realizes that this is correct. And they agree to do some workouts together. We get to see them in a dance class, and then they go hiking together, and they decide, well, Kirstie decides to try and run up the hill, and I fell out of breath watching her. I am not an uphill runner. I'm not a runner at all, to be perfectly honest. I don't jog ever, but I certainly prefer flat land. But it was fun to watch, and we have some beautiful scenery as well, and I don't know if they'll keep this up, by which I mean, will we see them working out together in the next episode, or will they go back to separate activities? I'll find out soon enough. We only have 4 episodes left. We're 2/3 of the way through, which is kind of heartbreaking because it's a really beautiful, really enjoyable series, but I won't get emotional about it until we get to the end. The Way We Weren't is a really great episode. Definitely has some different elements, with the part of it focusing on True and his band, and then we have the part focusing on the workouts. And as I said, it's been a couple of episodes since that was the case, so I was rather happy about that. Definitely an episode that I really enjoyed.